This sense of responsibility reminds me of the fact that the economy is happening. Though it's uncertain, it has a commitment sidestep global financial crisis. And as local economy for over 5 years, let's begin. The economy is complex. It works in a simple mechanical way. It's made of a few simple parts and a lot of simple transactions away that are repeated over and over several times. These transactions are bubble as driven by human nature, and they create three main forces that drive the economy. Number one, the activity. Number two, the short-term debt cycle. Number three, the long-term debt cycle. We look at these three forces and how random of each other creates conflict for tracking for the movements and figuring out what's happening now. Let's start with the simplest part of economic transactions. An economy is simply the same of those transactions that make it up. And the transactions is a very simple thing. You make transactions all the time. Every time you buy something, you create the transaction. Each transaction consists of a buyer exchanging money or credit with the seller for goods, services, financial assets. Credit spends just like money. So adding together the money spent, the amount credit spent, you couldn't know what total spending. The total amount of spending drives the economy. If we divide the amount spent by the quantity sold, you get the price. And that's it. It's a transaction. It's the building block of the economy machine. All cycle and process in the economy are driven by transactions. So if we can understand transactions, we can understand the whole economy. A market consists of all the buyers and all the seller market. Transactions are the same thing. For example, there is a web market, a car market, a stock market, and markets for millions of things. An economy consists of all the kind of transactions in all of its market. If you add up total spending and total quantity sold in all of the markets, they cover everything you need to know to understand the economy. It's just that simple. Big businesses, banks, and governments will engage in transactions the way I just described, exchanging money and credit for goods, services, and financial assets. The biggest buyer and seller is the government, which consists of two important parts. A central government that collects taxes and spends money, and a central bank, which is different from the buyers and sellers because it controls the amount of the money and credits the economy. It does this influencing interest rate and printing your money. For these reasons as well, the central bank is unimportant for you and credit. I want you to pay attention to credit. The credit is the most important part of the economy, but probably the less thing understood. It's the most important part because it's the biggest and most valuable part. It's the buyers and sellers go to market to make transactions, so do lenders and borrowers. Lenders usually want to make their money into more money, and borrowers usually want to buy something you can afford, like a house or a car. Or they want to invest in something like a start of a business. Credit can help both lenders and borrowers get what they want. The borrowers promise to pay the amount they borrow, called principal, plus additional amount called interest. When interest rates are high, there is less borrowing because it's expensive. When interest rates are low, borrowing increases because it's cheaper. The borrowers promise to pay, and lenders believe them. Credit created. And any two people can agree to create credit out of the air. That's the same separate. Well, credit is tricky because it has people's names. As soon as credit is created, it immediately turns into debt. Debt is both an asset to lender and a liability to the borrower. In the future, when the borrower repays the loan, plus interest, the asset and the liability disappear, and the transaction is settled. So why is the credit so important? Because when a borrower receives credit, he is able to increase his spending. And remember, spending drives the economy. This is because one person's spending is person's income. Think about it. Every dollar you spend, someone else earns, and every dollar you earn, someone else has spent. So when you spend more, someone else earns more. When someone's income rise, it makes the renter more willing to lend him money because now he's more worth of credit. Credit or borrowers to things, the ability to repay and collateral. Having a lot of income in relation to debt gives him the ability to repay. In the event that he can't repay, he has collateral asset to use as collateral that can be sold. This makes the renters feel comfortable lending him money. So increases the income, allows increases borrowing, which allows us increases spending. And since the person's spending is another person's income, this leads to more increases borrowing and so on. This is a new person how is the economic growth and is why I have cycles in a transaction. You have to give something in order to get something. And how much you get depends on how much you produce. Over time you learn and then accumulated knowledge raises our living standard. We call this productivity growth. Those who are inventive and hardworking raises their productivity and the living standard faster and those who are complacent and lazy. But that is necessarily true over the short run. Productivity matters most in the long run, but credit matters most in the short run. This is because productivity growth doesn't fluctuate much, so it's a big driver of economic swings. That is because our losses consume more, we produce when you acquire it, and it decreases and consume less than we produce. When you have to pay it back. That swings are going to big cycle. One takes about 5 to 8 years, and the other takes about 75 to 100 years. While almost the people trade swings, they're difficult to see them as cycle because they see them up to cloud, goes day by day, week by week. In this chapter, we are going to step back and look at these 3 big courses and how much contract to make up our experience. It mentions swings around the line around due to how much innovation or work there is. There's primarily due to how much credit there is. Let's economy is an economy without credit. In this economy, the only way I can increase my spending is to increase my income, which require me to be more productive and do more work. Increases productivity is the only way to grow. Since my spending is another person's income, the economy grows every time and only more productive. If we follow the transactions and play this out, we seek the progress like the productivity goal one. Because we borrow, we have cycles. This is many more regulation. It's the human nature and the way the credit works. Think of borrowing as simply a way of pulling spending forward. In order to buy something you can afford, you need to spend more than you make. To this, you essentially need to borrow from your future self. In doing so, you create a time in the future, and you need to spend less than you make in order to pay back. It's very quickly simple cycle. Basically, anytime you borrow, you create a cycle. This is as true individual as it is for the economy. This is why understanding credit is so important because it sets into motion a mechanical, predictable series of events that will happen in the future. This is incredible from money. Notice when you settle transactions with. When you buy your beer from bartender with cash, the transaction is settled immediately. But when you buy your bill credit, it's like starting a bartender. You're saying you promise to make future. Together you do bartender create the asset and liability. You just create credit out of thin air. It's not until you pay the bartender later that the asset and the liability disappear. The debt goes away and the transaction is settled. The reality is the most what people call money is actually credit. The total amount of credit in the United States is about $50 trillion. And the total amount of money is only about $3 trillion. Remember, in an economy without credit, the only way increases your spending is to produce more. But in an economy with credit, you can also increase your spending by borrowing. As a result, an economy with credit has more spending. and allows incomes to rise faster than productivity over the short run, but not over the long run. The don't get me wrong, credit is necessary, something bad that just causes cycles. It's bad when it finances overconsumption that can't be paid back. However, it's good when it is sufficiently allocated resources and produces income so you can pay back the debt. For example, if you borrow money to buy a big TV, if it does generate income for you to pay back the debt. But if borrow money to buy a tractor and that tractor lets you harvest more crops and no more money, then you can pay back your debt and you probably already started. In an economy with credit, we are called for transactions and see how credit creates growth. When you give it, suppose you owe $110,000, you have no debt. Your credit when working to borrow $10,000, say on a credit card. So you can spend $110,000 even though you only $100,000. Since your spending is another person's income, someone is earning $110,000. The person earning $110,000 with no debt can borrow $11,000, so he can spend $121,000, even though he has only earned $110,000. He is spending another person's income and following the transactions. We can begin to see how this process works in a self-referencing pattern. But remember, following creates cycles and if the cycles eventually needs to come down. This leads us into the short-term debt cycle. As economic activity increases, we see expense. The first phase of the short-term debt cycle. Spending continues to increase as prices start to rise. This happens because increases in spending is fueled by credit. It can credit installed out of thin air. When the amount of spending incomes grow faster than the production of goods, prices rise. When prices rise, we call this inflation. The central bank doesn't want too much inflation because it causes a problem. Since prices rise, it rises interest rates. With higher interest rates, fewer people can afford to borrow money. And of course, the existing debt rises. Think about this monthly payment on your credit card going up. Because people borrow less and higher debt repayments, they have less money. You have to understand. So spend slow. And since some person's spending is another person's income, incomes drop and so on and so forth. When people spend less, prices go down. We call this deflation. Economic activity decreases. We have a recession. In the recession, because this is severe and inflation no longer problem. The central bank will lower interest rates because pick up again. With low interest rates, the repayments are reduced and borrowing and spending pick up. And we set another expansion. And so you can see the economy works like a machine. In short-term debt cycle, spending is concentrated only by the willingness of lenders and borrowers to provide any severe credit. When credit is easily available, there is some economic expansion. When credit is easily available, there is a recession. And note that this cycle is controlled primarily by the central bank. The short-term debt cycle typically lasts over and over again for protect. But notice borrowers in each cycle finish with more room in the previous cycle and need more debt. Why? Because people proceed. They have an inclination to borrow and spend more, but still pay back debt. It's human nature. Because of this, over long periods of time, debt rise faster and create the long-term debt cycle. Despite people become more during lenders even more for instant credit. Why? Because everyone thinks things are going great. People are just focused on what's been happening lately. And what's been happening lately? Incomes have been rising. As the value growing, the stock market grows. It's a boom. It pays to buy good services and financial assets with borrowed money. When people borrow money, we call it bubble. So So even though bad debt have been growing, incomes have been growing nearly as fast to offset them. Let's call the ratio of debt to income to debt burden. So long as incomes continue to rise, the debt burden stays manageable. At the same time, asset value is soaring. People borrow huge amounts by asset investment, causing their prices to rise even higher. People feel bad. So even with the accumulation of a lot of debt, rising incomes, the asset value help borrowers remain credit worth for a long time. But the shop sure cannot continue forever, and it doesn't. Over decades, the burden slowly increases, creating larger and larger debt repayments. At some point, debt repayments start growing faster than incomes, forcing people to cut back on their spending. And since one person's spending is another person's income, incomes begin to double, which makes the people less credit-worthy towards borrowing towards them. Debt repayments continue to rise, which makes spending drop even further, and the cycle reverses itself. This is long-term debt pain. Therefore, the have simply become too big. For the United States, Europe, and much of the rest of the world, this happened in 2008. It happened for the same reason it happened in Japan in 1988. The United States back in 1929, 19, the economy begins to leverage. And the leverage people cost spending. Incomes fall, credit disappears, asset price drop, banks get squeezed, the stock market crashes. Social tensions rise and the whole thing starts to feel on the side of the other way. As incomes fall in debt repayments rise, borrowers get squeezed. No longer credit worthy, credit wipes out, and borrower can no longer borrow enough money to make their debt payments. Scrambling to fill their support, borrowers and forced to sell assets. Borrowers to sell assets follows the market at the same time as spending falls. This is when the stock market collapses. The real estate market tanks and banks get into trouble. As asset prices drop, the value of the collateral borrowers can become drop. This makes borrowers even less creditworthy. People feel good, credit rapidly disappears. Less spending, less income, less wealth, less credit, less borrowing, and so on. It's a vicious cycle. This appears similar to recession, but difference is that interest rates can't be worth to step down debt. In a recession, lowering interest rates works to stimulate the borrowing. However, in the deliveries, lowering interest rates doesn't work because interest rates are very low when so hit 0%. So stimulation will end. Interest rates in the United States is 0% during the 11th United States and again in 2008. The difference between a recession and a deleveraging is that in deleveraging borrowers' debt burdens have simply gotten too big and can't be provided by lowering interest rates. Lenders realize that debt have become too large to ever be fully paid back. Borrowers have lost their ability to repay. Collateral has lost value. They feel critical about them. They don't even know more. Lenders stop lending, borrowers stop borrowing. Think of the economy as being not creditworthy, just like an individual. So what do you do about individual leveraging? The problem is that borders are too high and they must come down. There are four ways this can happen. 1. For people, businesses, and governments cut their spending. 2. Debt are reduced through default and restructuring. 3. Wealth is redistributed from the haves to have-nots. And finally, 4. The central bank prints new money. These four ways have happened in every deliverance in modern history. Usually spending is cut first. As a result, so people, businesses, and even governments try their best and cut their spending so that they can pay their debt. This is often referred to as the external. When borrowers stop taking on new debt and start paying down old debt, you might expect debt burden to increase. But the opposite happens because spending is cut, and one man's spending is another man's income. It causes incomes to fall. They fall faster than debt they paid, and the debt burden actually gets more. It's worse. As we've seen, this cut in spending is discretionary and painful. Businesses are forced to cut costs, which means less jobs and higher unemployment. This leads to the next step. They must be reduced. Many borrowers find themselves unable to repay their loans, and the borrower's debt are rendered asset. When a borrower starts to repay the bank, people get nervous as the bank won't be able to repay them, so they rush to withdraw their money from the bank. Banks get squeezed, and people, business, and banks default on their debt. This severe economic transaction is a direct deflation. A big part of deflation is people discovering much of what they do was already is really there. Let's go back to bar. When you bought a beer and put a bartender, you promise to repay the bartender. You promise to become asset of the bartender. But if you break your promise, if you don't pay back is actually default on your bartender. As an asset, yes, it's really working. It has basically disappeared. Many lenders went there as to disappear and agreed to debt restructuring. Debt restructuring means lenders get paid back less or get paid over a longer time frame for the low interest rates than was first agreed. Somehow, a contract is broken in a way that reduces the debt. Lenders would rather have a deal of something than all of nothing, even though debt disappears. Debt restructuring causes income and asset value to disappear fast, so the debt burden continues to get worse. Like current spending, debt reduction is so painful in desperation. All of this impacts the central government because lower incomes and less employment means the government collects fewer taxes. At the same time, it needs increases its spending because employment has risen. Many of unemployed have none of saving and need financial support from the government. Additionally, government creates stimulus plans and increases their spending to make up for the decreases in the economy. Government's budget deficit is brought into deleveraging because they spend more than they earn in taxes. This is what's happening when you hear about the budget deficits on the news. The form there is that the government need to either raise its taxes or borrow money. The income's pouring in so many employees. Who is the money going to come from? The rich. Since governments need more money, and since the wealth is heavily concentrated entitled to a small percentage of the people, governments need to raise its taxes on the wealthy, which facilitates the reduced portion of the wealth in the economy. From the hands of the have-nots, but have-nots who are suffering begin to present the wealthy ones. The wealthy have been squeezed by the weak economy, falling asset prices and higher taxes, begin to resent to have-nots. If the depression continues, social disorder can break out. Not only the tension rises within countries, they can rise between countries, especially battle there are incredible countries. This situation can lead to political change that can sometimes be extreme. In the 1930s, as there was Hitler coming to power, war in Europe and his depression in the United States. The pressure to do something to end the depression increases. Remember, most of what people do towards money was actually credit. So when credit disappears, people don't have any money. People run with this fear for money, and you remember who can print money? The central bank can. Having already lowered its interest rates to near zero, it's forced to print money. Online cutting spending, debt reduction, and wealth reduction through printing money, inflationary stimulus. On average, the central bank prints new money out of thin air and uses it to buy financial assets to government bonds. It happened in the United States during the Great Depression, and again in 2008 in the United States Central Bank. And Federal Reserve print over $2 trillion. Other central banks around the world that could print a lot of money too. By buying financial assets with this money, it helps drive an asset crisis, which makes people in the credit world. However, this only helps those who financial assets. You see, the central bank can print money, but it can only buy financial assets. The central government, on the other hand, can be buy goods and services and put money in the hands of the people, but it can't print money. So, in order to stimulate the economy, the two must cooperate. By buying government bonds, the central bank essentially raises the money to government, allowing it to load deficit and increases spending on goods and services through its stimulus programs and unemployment benefits. This increases people's income as well as the government debt. However, it will lower the economy's total debt burden. This is very risky time. Policymakers need to balance the poor ways that burden comes down. The deflationary waves need to balance with an inflationary waves in order to maintain stability. Imbalanced collectively then can be a beautiful deleveraging. You see, a deleveraging can be ugly or it can be beautiful. How can I deleveraging be beautiful? Even though deleveraging is a difficult situation, handling a difficult situation is the best possible way beautiful. What more beautiful than that was unbalanced excess at the leveraging pace? In a beautiful deleveraging debt decline relative to income. Real economic growth is positive. Positive in inflationary program. It is achieved by having the right balance. The right balance requires a certain mix of credit, current spending, reduced debt, transporting better and printing money so that the economy and social stability can be maintained. People risk printing money will raise inflation. We want it is offset cutting credit. Remember, spending is worth better. A dollar of spending paid for with money has the same impact on the prices as a dollar of spending paid for with credit. By printing money, the central banks can make up for disappearance of credit with an increase in the amount of money. In order to turn things around, the central banks needs to not only promote income growth, but get the rate of income growth higher than the rate of interest of accumulated debt. So what do I mean? What do I mean by that? Basically, income needs to grow faster than debt growth. For example, let's assume that a country going through the leveraging has a debt to income ratio of 110%. That means the amount of debt it has the amount of income the entire country makes in a year. Now think about the interest rate of the debt. Let's say it's 2%. As debt is growing 2% because of the debt increase. Interest rate in income only growing around 1%. You will never reduce the debt burden. You need to print enough money to get the rate of income grow above the rate of interest. However, printing money could easily because it is so to do it perfectly to the actual fit. The case of printing too much money and causing unacceptably high inflation, to which Germany did during its deleveraging in 1920. If policymakers achieve the right balance, or deleveraging isn't dramatic. Growth is slow, the debt burdens go down. That's beautiful deleveraging. Incomes begin to rise, borrowers begin to appear more money creditworthy. And when borrowers appear more creditworthy, lenders begin to lend money again. Debt burdens finally begin to fall. If the borrow money, people can be spending. Eventually, the economy begins to grow again, leading to reflation and pay for the long-term debt cycle. Though the deleveraging process can be hard if handled badly. If handled well, it will eventually fix the problem. It takes roughly a decade or more for economic activity to get back to normal, hence the time lost a decade. In closing, of course, the economy is a little bit more complicated than this tablet suggests. However, laying the short-term debt cycle on top of the long-term debt cycle, and then laying burden on top of the productivity growth line, if a reasonably good happens for thing where we pay, is where we know and where we probably have. So in summary, there is three rules of power of life like to take away from this. First, don't have the wise past then come, because that bonus will eventually crush you. Second, don't have incorrect past when productivity because you will eventually become incompatible. And third, you do all you can raise your productivity because in the long run, that's what matters most. This is a simple advice for you. You knew it's a simple advice for policymakers. You might be surprised, but most people, including most policymakers, don't pay enough attention to this. This template has worked for me, and I hope it will work for you. Thank you.